everybody to our March Twitch stream. Today, my name is Paul Brodder, not just today, but always, and I'm the Technical Engineering Manager at Chocolatey Software. Above me on the camera, you can see Gary Park. Gary, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. As Paul said, my name is Gary Park. I'm a Senior Software Engineer here at Chocolatey. And yeah, I'm happy to bring you some of the information about the improvements to Chocolatey GUI, which has just recently been shipped, of the main focus of today's stream.
Yeah, as Gary said, we're going to focus first of all on Chocolatey GUI, 0.20.0 release, and also the Chocolatey GUI licensed extension v0.4.0 that we also released at the same time. It's been the first release of Chocolatey GUI for a little while, and we're trying to give Chocolatey GUI a little bit more love here at Chocolatey. There's a couple of things I wanted to say before we kind of jump in. If you want to use the Twitch chat to answer questions, there's members of the Chocolatey team available and we'll be able to answer some questions. If your question is very technical, then the best place actually to ask is in Discord, or if you're a licensed customer, you can ask in support, but you probably already know that. So today it's just really some questions around Chocolatey GUI and Chocolatey GUI license extension we're looking for, so that we can bring them into the stream and have a chat about them and answer those questions. One thing that we wanted to do just before we jump on to Chocolatey GUI is talk about our Chocolatey Central Management and a few other components we released at the beginning of this week. That's right, Gary, it was on Monday, wasn't it, we released those?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I've done all of my admin bits. I'll be passing over the hosting duties to Gary. So Gary, you can take it away.
Thank you very much. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, so as Paul mentioned, at the start of the week, we released, there was 3 product updates. There was one for Chocolatey Central Management, there was one for Chocolatey Agent, and there was one for Chocolatey Licensed Extension. So the main crux of this release for all of those components was a couple of our customers who we'd worked with on through some beta packages had identified a high memory, high CPU issue with CCM deployments when there was a high number of deployments and a high number of computers involved. So we worked with those customers through, like I say, a couple of iterations of beta packages, trying to identify the root cause of that. And we believe that we've now gotten to the bottom of that particular problem. And the reason that we had to do 3 product releases was because part of the shared infrastructure between all of those meant that we needed to release both a new version of Chocolatey Central Management, a new version of Chocolatey Agent, and a new version of Chocolatey Licensed. Now, if you're not using CCM deployments, there's no strict requirement to update CCM or the Chocolatey Agent or Chocolatey License, but it would be our recommendation that you keep all of the products as up to date as possible. So we would definitely recommend that you get all of those packages installed. So that was the main focus of that CCM release. There were a couple of other things mentioned in the release notes that I'm sharing here. But like I say, the main crux of it was regarding that high memory issue that is noted there in the bug fix. The features, there was, in the 0.7.0 release, there was a new sensitive variables feature we added for advanced deployment PowerShell steps, and we've made it now so that those sensitive variables don't make their way back into the log file when they come back into CCM, when they report back into CCM. We did a little bit of a feature, which was the storing of the package version. It's stored in the database, so that's more from a support perspective. We're able to provide more insight into support issues when we know exactly what package version was used to install the database schema. There was one security bug fix regarding the ASP.NET Core anti-forgery cookie, where it was pointed out from a customer that it wasn't using the secure flag when it was sitting behind an IIS website that was using an SSL certificate. So we fixed that. And the other one there, the improvements there, was more all around, it's part of that high memory issue. We noticed that there was a lot of information being processed when it didn't actually need to be processed. So to optimize the reporting in of computers into CCM, we made some adjustments there. So all in all, there's unfortunately in this release, there was no new functionality really added. It was all about consolidating and making that high memory and high CPU issue go away. So that was kind of all I had to add on to that one, Paul.
Yeah, as we kind of spoke beforehand, as we always do, with the CCM release, while it's a big deal for Chocolatey when we release anything, the actual changes that were in there wasn't many to kind of talk about. But what I didn't want to do was just ignore it, because it did happen at the beginning of this week, and people may be going, well, you did one in Chocolatey GUI that was released before that. Why did you not mention CCM? So that was the only reason we're really bringing it up there. So hopefully that covers everything for anybody. I don't see any questions in the chat round about that. So yeah, so Gary, Chocolatey GUI, your baby, so to speak, and Chocolatey GUI licensed extension. If you want to talk all things GUI.
Sure, yeah. So let's start with the second package. So the second package that I'm referring to is the Chocolatey GUI license extension. So for anyone that doesn't know, in the same way that there is a Chocolatey license extension, there is a Chocolatey GUI license extension that, when it's installed, adds functionality to Chocolatey GUI when you have a business license in play. It's the exact same way that we add the Chocolatey extension to add functionality into Chocolatey itself. So in terms of its release, which was the 0.4.0 release, there was technically a breaking change, but that was purely due to the fact that for reasons, and I'll go into that, but Chocolatey GUI itself changed its target .NET Framework version, and we bumped it to 4.8. Previously, it was 4.5. So because we've changed the dependency to be a higher version, technically that's a breaking change from our perspective. So there's no new functionality added into the Chocolatey GUI license extension, but we did need to bump the version because we changed that base .NET Framework version, and we had to recompile and to target that one. So that's all that went into that release. The main crux of functionality that we shipped is all in Chocolatey GUI itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through some of the release notes, and where I can, I'm going to show the functionality in play, because I've got a VM sitting behind this window where we can look at Chocolatey GUI and we can talk about the functionality that's been added. So in terms of the release notes for Chocolatey GUI, we've got the same breaking change there because we have, again, changed the base .NET Framework version, so it is 4.8. The reason that we had to do that lies further down in the release notes, which was to support per monitor DPI. So in newer versions of Windows, there's better handling of distinct multi-monitor support in terms of having different DPIs on different monitors. And in order for Chocolatey GUI to work correctly in those scenarios, we did need to bump the .NET Framework version, because the higher .NET Framework version had better baseline support for that. So in doing a change to the underlying windowing system that we use, we had to change to the .NET Framework version. So that's why we had to do it, and that's why we made the decision to do it. But if I go back up to the features here, so this is a big one. Allow for passing in package parameters and install arguments when installing a package. This is a long-awaited feature in Chocolatey GUI. So I wanted to start there. So if I go here, so if anyone's not seen it, this is Chocolatey GUI. You can flip between list views and tile views, and you can get an understanding of what packages are available on the sources that you've got enabled. You can perform installations, uninstallations, all that sort of stuff. And previously, Chocolatey GUI was kind of not limited in the sense, but if you wanted to install, say, Adobe Acrobat Reader, then you could right-click on it and you would click install, and that would perform the installation in the same way as if you typed Choco install Adobe Reader at the command line. But one of the things that was missing was the ability to perform an advanced installation in the form of passing in package parameters or installation arguments or specifying a specific version of a package. None of that could be done through Chocolatey GUI, but now it can. So what I did there from the Chocolatey feed, I just went into the details page of a package. So I can either do that by right-clicking and going on details, or I can double-click on it. And what we get here is the install advanced button. So if you click on that button, you get a second modal window pops up. And in here, you can pass in package parameters. So if, for example, the underlying package has package parameters that you could pass in, that might be a package parameter similar to no desktop shortcuts, or install related extension, or various package parameters that you can pass in, then this freeform text box here will allow you to pass those in. So a good example, if I go and find it, actually, if I go and do a search here for the Git package, the Git package has a number of package parameters that you can pass in. So what I'm going to hopefully show you is how you would use those. So if I go and double click on there, I've already got it installed, so it won't let me do it. That's fortunate. What I was going to show was that in here, in the description of the package, you've got here all the package parameters you've got. So if I didn't already have this installed, you could have this page open, and then you would click the advanced install button, and then it would pop up, and you could then type in the parameters as you've got them in the window whilst typing them into the one that's there. That's obviously not going to work. But if I use a different package and I go into the details, then I can go install advanced. But then this is a window, so you can move this around. So if your package parameters are sitting behind there in the description, type them in as you're going. But then in addition to the kind of high level package parameters, install arguments, you've also got literally every single command line option that you can pass in. So if the package for some reason has the invalid checksums contained within the package, you can then specify, well, you can ignore the checksums, you can override the checksums, all the things that you can do with the command line. Then you can do dependency options. So if you want to ignore dependencies, force dependencies, etc. So literally any of the command line arguments that you could pass in when running Chocolatey from the command line, you can absolutely now do that in Chocolatey GUI as well. So one of the common questions related to this feature is, well, I want to pass in those same parameters when I am doing an upgrade. So if I double click on this one, then what you'll find is that there currently isn't an update advanced option. The reason for that is simple. I mean, we wanted to put out this release where we show what our thinking is in terms of doing an advanced installation. And then once we collect some feedback, once we know that everyone's happy with it, we'll then extend the same functionality to the other Chocolatey commands that you can do through Chocolatey GUI, namely upgrade, uninstall, pin. All of those will then have an advanced modal dialog in the same way that you have for the install command. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I say, it's been a long-awaited feature that folks have been asking for as long as I've been the maintainer of Chocolatey GUI, and that's been a long time. So it's great to see this feature finally making it into the application. So jumping back to the release notes, there was a feature added which allows the user to change the locale they want to use. So for a long time now, we have a team of community maintainers who keep the translations of the Chocolatey GUI user interface up to date. So the default one that I write in, because that's the only language that I can speak anyway close to fluently, is in English. So I do the Chocolatey GUI functionality, and when I add in the text, I do it in English. But then we've got a bunch of people who translate that into Dutch, into German, into Spanish, etc. Now, before, Chocolatey GUI would look at what the system locale is. So if your Windows installation is in German, then Chocolatey GUI will pick that up and it will show it in German. What we've added now is the ability to change the specified language. So if I wanted to attempt to read German, then I can click German from the drop-down list, and where those translations have been done, you will see that immediately reflected within the user interface. And then obviously, if I flip back to the one that I was on before, then it updates again. Now, the default, again, is still that Chocolatey GUI will look at the system locale and it'll say, what is the system locale? That's the one I'm going to use by default. But you obviously have the option to change that to your preferred one. And then this change, once you've made it, that will be persisted. And then the next time you open up Chocolatey GUI, it will still be in that language as well. So that's that one. The next one is the provide ability to see persistent arguments for an install package. Now, again, this is a long-awaited feature and a much asked for feature in Chocolatey in general. But before, when I said we've now got the installed advanced install modal dialog, all of those arguments that you pass in when you do an installation, they're remembered. And there is a feature, there is a beta feature in Chocolatey where we actually say, on upgrade, I want you to remember the arguments that I passed in and use them again during the upgrade. But there's no functionality at the minute in Chocolatey to view those persistent arguments in order to know what was passed in. So that has changed. So now if I go to a package, say, let's use the 7-zip one. If I go to this one again in the details page, there's a new button here, which is view package arguments. So if I used an advanced installation where I passed in some parameters, or I forced x86 installation of a package, anything that was persisted into a file during the installation process, you can now view it here by looking at that view package arguments. The idea here is that there is, not in this release, but in terms of where this functionality is going, there is sometimes the need to, or the requirement to change a persistent argument because maybe something's changed on your machine and you don't want that to be used on future upgrades. So what this eventually will let you do is to both view and edit the persistent arguments for a given package and a package version that's installed on your machine. So at the minute, we're just doing the view portion of it. So that's what you're seeing there. Now, obviously, you might think, well, why would I need that? The reason that it's needed to be exposed within Chocolatey GUI is because of the potential for those arguments to be not wanting to be human visible. They are encrypted at rest when they're persisted to disk, so it needs to be decrypted, and that's what we're doing now within the Chocolatey GUI application. So that's that one. Going back to the release notes, there's the ability to search or filter features and settings. So what this one's talking about is if I go up to the settings page here, then I'm happy to say, in a way, that Chocolatey GUI is getting, I'm not going to use the word complicated because that's not right. Chocolatey GUI is now getting to the point where it has enough features that this list is becoming quite long. So all of these features that you can toggle on and off, it's getting quite long. So scrolling up and down through it can become difficult. So what we've added is a search box. So now if you type in here, then immediately it will filter down to a feature that contains that in the title. That will work at the on the settings as well. So there's only 2 settings over here, so it's not quite as necessary. But what we have added is the same functionality on the Chocolatey features and the Chocolatey settings, which you can also see through Chocolatey GUI. So if you wanted to filter to something on the new command, then you can type in there and it will immediately show that one, and you can toggle it on and off. And the same over here in settings, again, filter down, find the one that you're interested in, and then you can make a change to that one to set it to the value that you want. I quite like that feature, mainly because I've been there in terms of trying to find something in Chocolatey GUI, and it's not, like I say, I'm happy that we're getting to the point that we have enough features that it's becoming difficult, but now we're just trying to make it a little bit easier to get to those settings and bring them to the forefront. The next 3 were really about any operation that you're doing on Chocolatey GUI or within Chocolatey GUI that had the potential to be a breaking change. We've added a confirmation to it. So for example, in my sources within Chocolatey GUI, I've got 2 sources configured. If I were to click on this one and then say remove, I'm now going to get a warning dialog that tells me, well, actually, are you sure you want to perform that operation? Previously, that would have just went straight away and deleted that, which obviously you might not have meant to push the button, or you clicked on the wrong one. So there is now a confirmation saying, are you actually sure you want to delete that source? So that's in there. The other place that is in play is the the update all button. So this button up here is the update all. So if I were to push this button, or more specifically, if I were to have pushed this button in the previous version of Chocolatey GUI, then that would have immediately gone off and started doing the update all. That operation, depending on how many outdated packages you have, can be a lengthy operation. And you might think, oh, actually, I didn't want to do that right now. Didn't mean to do that. You're going to get prompted there. We have had some feedback on that particular function where we want to potentially have another setting similar to the one in Chocolatey itself, where there is a global confirmation. So rather than having to do -y every time you do a Chocolatey operation at the command line, have a similar one in Chocolatey GUI to not show those modal pop-ups. So basically saying, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be held accountable for it. If you flip that setting on, when you click the update all button, it would immediately do the operation. So we have had some feedback on that. So in the next version, or maybe not the next version, but a version after that, we will be looking to provide an override for that modal dialog that you're seeing there. The other one is on the uninstall. So if I were to attempt the uninstall of this, I should get a prompt again saying, are you sure you want to perform that? Now, you don't get that operation during the install because it's not a destructive or a potentially destructive operation in terms of the packages that you have installed. So that was the thought process there. So that's what those three features we're talking about there. Moving over to the bugs, there were the first one here is install button is not disabled when installation of packages is not allowed. So what this one's referring to is if you are using, and this is kind of where the Chocolatey GUI license extension comes into play. So in the open source version of Chocolatey, what we always show is every single operation that Chocolatey GUI can perform. So whether it's an install, whether it's an uninstall, whether it's an upgrade, a pin, whatever. If you are running with Chocolatey licensed, where you are running in a mode where non-administrator users might be using the machines, there's a mechanism within Chocolatey itself to say, well, when I'm running in that mode, I only want my users to perform the install operation, or I only want the users to perform the install and the upgrade operation. So you can restrict what operations are allowed. Now, in a visual interface, we don't want to, so what I'm referring to here are all these operations here. So depending on what operations are enabled when you're using the Chocolatey GUI license extension, we'll either gray them out or we'll not show them depending on the scenario. And there was one place where we left it so that that didn't work the way it was meant to. So in here, that's a bad example because that's not the button. But if I were to go to one that I don't have installed, so let's go back to the Chocolatey feed. If I were to double click on Sourcetree for Windows here, then this install button wouldn't respect those settings. So if for some reason we were using kind of Chocolatey GUI in a read-only mode in an organization with the Chocolatey GUI license extension, and I wanted to prevent users from performing an install, then even though the install function was prevented, this button was still visible. So if it's visible, it means it's clickable. It means that I can do that operation. So we wanted to make it clear that if it wasn't enabled, we disable the button. So that's now been taken care of. So at the minute in my system, I'm not running in that restricted mode. So I'm an administrator, so I can see all the operations all the time. So that's what that one was. Message boxes used to report issues often don't stay open. So this was one of my work colleagues, Corey, figured out what the underlying issue here was. But there was a scenario where Chocolatey GUI would, on very, very early in the startup process of Chocolatey GUI, if there was something not quite right and it errored out, it would very, very quickly show a message box that said what the problem was, and then that message box would disappear to the point that you couldn't see it anymore, basically rendering it useless. So Corey was able to figure out what the problem was, and now if there is that edge case where there is a bug right at the start of the application starting, that message box will stay, it will show the error message, and you can take that back to an open source support ticket or a a customer support ticket if you've got a license with us. So that's what that one was. And then this one, all operations on packages with a progress dialog are broken. This one, Jan, who is one of our community contributors to Chocolatey GUI, he does a lot of work for us, and we're very, very grateful for the work that he does. What he noticed was that if I were performing an operation, typically what happens within Chocolatey GUI is a progress dialog opens to show what's going on, but that progress dialog wouldn't always close when it was meant to. So it was for anyone that does .NET development, it was an issue with async and await, and we weren't handling that correctly. So Jan put in a pull request to get that fixed. So that's what that bug was talking about. So moving down into improvements. The first one there is ensure that the Wix installer verifies that the .NET Framework 4.8 is installed. So we use Chocolatey GUI under the hood actually has an MSI installer, and we build that MSI installer using the technology known as Wix. So what this was an addition to the Wix installer so that we verify that .NET Framework 4.8 is installed prior to running the installation of Chocolatey GUI. Now that's sort of belt and braces because the Chocolatey package itself will verify that .NET Framework 4.8 is installed as a dependency, and it'll install that first. But this one is really for anyone who's installing the MSI directly, if they choose to, because it is available as an MSI. It will also make sure that .NET Framework 4.8 is installed prior to running the installation. That one was a community contribution as well. That was from a work colleague. He's not really a work colleague of mine. He's an open source work colleague of mine because we worked together on the Cake project, but that came from Nils. So thanks to Nils for doing that one. This one was a bugbear of mine. I'm going to claim responsibility for fixing this one. So if I go back over here and I go to settings, then previously all of these features were basically in a random order, mainly when they got added to Chocolatey GUI. So different features have been available in different versions of Chocolatey GUI. I've now made it so that they're in alphabetical order. It makes it much easier to find, and in alphabetical order, and then in conjunction with the filtering, it makes it much easier to find the feature that you're looking for and then toggle it on and off. So I'm really happy with that feature. Yeah, I'm definitely taking responsibility for that one because I did do that one. The next one, I've kind of spoken around the support for per monitor DPI, already spoken about that one. And this one, Chocolatey GUI doesn't write to the Chocolatey log. This has been a long-standing bug in Chocolatey GUI. And what it's basically saying is, if I perform an operation, so if, for example, I went to try and install Git version here, Chocolatey GUI will do its work. It'll capture the log, it'll show the log in the window, etc. It'll do the installation, but that log doesn't make its way into the actual Chocolatey log. So what I'm referring to there, if I go down here and I go into C, program data, Chocolatey, and then in logs, then this log file here, that won't contain the operation that I just performed. But with the change that we've just made, and also an earlier change to Chocolatey itself, the log now makes its way into both the Chocolatey GUI log and the Chocolatey log. And that was always the intention. We always wanted to see the operation in the central Chocolatey log, but it wasn't being stored there. But now it will be. So that was Kim on the team that figured out what was going on there, both from a Chocolatey perspective and a Chocolatey GUI perspective. Then we also had some documentation changes. Some of these were community contributions, I believe. I can't remember, but it basically comes down to if and when people find issues on the documentation site or within Chocolatey GUI itself, we'll make those changes and fire them out when we can. So that's the Chocolatey GUI release notes for 0.20.0. The only other thing I wanted to kind of mention, because we don't talk about it a lot, we have got information on the website now. So actually, if I go back over here and I go to docs.chocolatey.org, what we have done reasonably recently is that we have consolidated all of the Chocolatey GUI documentation into docs.chocolatey.org. Now, previously, Chocolatey GUI, which was kind of being run as a sister project, it had its own documentation on its own website. Now it has been consolidated now into docs.chocolatey.org. So if you're looking for information about, say, the package details page, then all of the information about what it is, what it does, how it does it, what actions are available to be taken when you're running Chocolatey GUI, all of that information is now on docs.chocolatey.org. So some of the stuff I've just spoken about today, we do have that documented on the website where we didn't before. So I'm really happy to see that making its way into there. But one of the things I want to just kind of talk about is some of the business features that some people might not be aware of. So as an example, so what we're looking at just now is essentially the open source version of Chocolatey with the Chocolatey GUI license extension enabled. Now, the reason that I know that it's enabled is because down here at the bottom left-hand corner, it tells me that I'm running the business edition. So that's the exact same thing as if I go to Chocolatey and I ask Chocolatey what version, then it's telling me it's the business edition. So when that only appears when the Chocolatey GUI, this part here only appears to say business when the Chocolatey license extension is installed. And the equivalent on the Chocolatey GUI interface is down here when the Chocolatey GUI license extension is installed. Okay, so that's how I know that I've got the license extension in play. And one of the things that we're able to do is to do some custom branding. So in an organizational context, I might want to make the Chocolatey GUI interface feel more like it's my company. And I want my users to know that this is sanctioned by the company, etc. So there's the capability to brand Chocolatey GUI. And we can do that. It's really simple. It's on the website. So I'm happy to say that if we go back up here and we look at features and we look at, I won't be able to find it now because I need to find it. But if I search for here and look for branding, then there's a whole article on there discussing exactly how to do it, what icons are needed, what logos are needed, where you need to put things, how to create a Chocolatey package to do all of the things to drop things onto the file system where they need to be. So what I'm away to do here is I'm away to install a branding package that I made earlier. So I'm just going to go ahead and run that. And once that's installed, if I go ahead and run Chocolatey GUI, the first thing that you should hopefully see is that the splash screen that previously would have had the Chocolatey GUI logo or the Chocolatey logo contained within it now has my company logo associated with it. Up at the top left here, it's branded again to say that this is my company logo. We do still put a Chocolatey logo down here to say that it's powered by Chocolatey, but you have the capability there to, again, just make the slight modifications to the user interface to allow your users to know that this is a sanctioned application within the organization. So that's one of the Chocolatey for Business features. A couple of the other ones that I want to talk through is, I'm going to go back a step. In this, all the features that are available both in Chocolatey GUI and Chocolatey GUI license extension, they always appear in this list. So regardless if you've just got the open source version of Chocolatey installed, you will still see the for business features available. But what you'll see here, there is a note here that says that this feature will only work with Chocolatey for Business and the Chocolatey GUI license extension installed. So if I was on the open source version and I toggle this feature on, then it wouldn't actually have any impact unless the Chocolatey GUI license extension is installed. So I hope that makes sense. But one of the ones I wanted to show, for example, was this one, prevent all package icon downloads. Now, you might wonder, why would you want that feature? But from an organizational standpoint, you might be working in a restricted environment that doesn't have access to the internet, and you don't want packages reaching out to the internet to grab an icon when it can't access because there might be a proxy in play or various other reasons. So you can actually tell Chocolatey GUI to not attempt to download icons when it first loads up. So I'm going to enable that feature but I'm also going to go and click this button down here, which is to purge the icons that are cached by Chocolatey GUI. So I get back to a known state. And I'm going to go and close the application, and I'm going to go and reopen it again. So what should happen now is that rather than on initial loading, Chocolatey GUI going off and attempting to fetch all of the icons for all of the packages, what it does instead is it just replaces them all with a default Chocolatey logo, because that's the one that we've got available to us. And it's just an attempt to make it clear that all of the packages are Chocolatey packages, obviously, but it hasn't reached out to the internet. It hasn't attempted to download all the icons. And what you've got now is just a standalone package, what you're showing there. So that's one of the business features. All of these Chocolatey GUI license features have come from direct requests from customers. So if there is anything that Chocolatey GUI doesn't do today that you think it needs to do, then absolutely reach out. Because the other one, for example, is hide all remote Chocolatey sources. So what this one's really referring to is right now I've got this PC source set up, which is all of my locally installed packages, but I've also got available to me all of the remote sources that I can install packages from. So this is what I've got configured for me based on my system. So one of the requests that came in from one of our customers is that they essentially wanted to run Chocolatey GUI in almost a read-only mode. They wanted to be able to allow their customers to, or their employees to see what packages were installed, but they didn't necessarily want them to be able to see what's available in the upstream sources. So what we did there was we enabled a feature. So if I go back down here and I say hide all remote Chocolatey sources, if I toggle that one on, that one will need a restart of Chocolatey GUI because it remembers what sources are configured. If I go ahead and close and then reopen that one again, what we should see now is that those two sources are now disabled. Well, that's wrong. That's not strictly true. Those two sources are still on the system, but they're just not being shown within Chocolatey GUI. And that, like I say, that was a customer specifically came in and said that they want this to be this way. And then as it happens, another customer came along and said, well, I want to do the exact opposite of that. I want to be able to see only what I've got available on my remote sources. And I want to hide this PC source. Now, obviously, if you enable that one and you enable that one, you're going to have nothing left. But I think Chocolatey GUI will default to showing this PC source if you enable both of them. But I'm going to go ahead and toggle that one back off again. So in this scenario, when I close and reopen Chocolatey GUI, this time round, I should see just the upstream sources that I have available. So in this case, Chocolatey and Chocolatey licensed, but I won't see this PC source. And that's exactly what's happening here. So again, feature requests that come directly from customers who are using Chocolatey for Business along with Chocolatey GUI. So if you've got any suggestions about what's missing, what needs to be changed, etc., definitely reach out via support if you have that avenue available to you, or in the open source version of Chocolatey through the issues on the repository. We'd love to hear from you. But I think that's all I've got, Paul, because that was all of those features discussed. So back over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Gary. Hopefully that gives everybody a good overview of Chocolatey GUI and Chocolatey GUI license extension. As Gary said, it's not something we talk about very much. It's a licensed extension to Chocolatey GUI. So it's good to be able to show the features off there that people get with that. Particularly, as you showed the brand in there, Gary, that's really good for an organization to be able to let their users know that this is a trusted application because it's got the company logo on there. One question I wanted to ask, Gary, we're talking about when you were looking at the release notes, where we're looking at contributions from the community. And when we did the last Twitch stream, we talked a lot about the importance of community for Chocolatey GUI, for Chocolatey CLI. So I wanted to ask you, what is the community like with Chocolatey GUI? So we've got improvements there made by a couple of long-standing users of the product. So I wanted to know what else is the community kind of working on around about Chocolatey GUI?
So yeah, it's definitely fair to say that we've got a reasonably strong community or long-standing members of the community who've got an active interest in Chocolatey GUI. Jan being one of the main contributors. So to a little bit of context there, Jan maintains another open source project called MAApps Metro, and it's a WPF controls library, and we've adopted MAApps Metro within Chocolatey GUI. So Jan's done a bunch of work in terms of, for example, being able to have a dark theme available within Chocolatey GUI. All of that's powered by the underlying MAApps framework, and that came from all the Jan's contributions. Like I said, Nils did a bunch of stuff. Kim previously, before he was a Chocolatey employee, he was a big contributor to Chocolatey GUI. But in terms of what's coming up, there's lots of stuff that I want to be able to do. But some of those things, both on open source side and the commercial side, there's been a few other requests from customers that I want to implement within Chocolatey GUI license extension. But the slight issue there is I need to make, or someone needs to make changes in the open source version of Chocolatey GUI to allow those interaction points. So for example, if I go again and look at the advanced install option in here, so the one thing that's not, or the things that are not shown in here are the business options or the business features that you can do when you're doing an installation. So for example, the ability to say -- package parameter sensitive or -- install argument sensitive, or being able to pass in the ubiquitous install directory where you want to always install to a common location. None of those are shown because mainly because I can't at the minute. That's the nicest way to put it. I need to put in, installation entry points within Chocolatey GUI itself, so that in the Chocolatey GUI business license extension, I can add in those additional parameters into here when the Chocolatey GUI license extension is installed. So there's some work around there that we want to do. There's one other thing that it's been a much asked for feature within Chocolatey GUI, and it's one that I would love to tackle at some point, or if one of the community members wants to come along and help out, I'm all for it. But one of the ones that always comes up is being able to do multiple operations at the same time within Chocolatey GUI. So what I mean by that is, well, I might come through here and I might search for Adobe and I might want to install it, and then I might want to continue searching for something else, and I might want to install it, and I might want to keep searching and go and install something else. What happens right now is it's very much a serial process within Chocolatey GUI. So if I were to go ahead and say install Adobe Reader, then what happens is that window pops up, it performs the installation, and really I can't do anything else within Chocolatey GUI when that's happening. So what I want to change it to is a task-based system. So you could say, well, I'm going to install this one, and then it just starts happening in the background. And then you pick another one and it gets added to the list and it'll be processed. So similar to like a shopping cart idea within Chocolatey GUI, you just say, install this, upgrade this, uninstall this, and it'll just action those as it's going. But the main portion of the user interface is still accessible to perform other operations. So that would be a big, massive change to the way that Chocolatey GUI works, but it's also much more in line with what folks are doing anyway. So that would be one of the big ones I would like to tackle at some point. And like I say, there will definitely be community involvement in that, because, yeah, my WPF isn't as good as other folks in the community. So I will be reaching out to some of those to get some information on how that can be done and how that can be achieved. But those would be the big things that I can think of off the top of my head.
So I think one of the things that we talk about with Chocolatey GUI, and one of the things we'd also brought up when we had the start of the COVID pandemic, was that when people are working from home, Chocolatey GUI is really the avenue that normal, I say normal, less technical users who don't want to use a command line, let's say that, want to actually be able to install software on their machine. So when people move out of the offices and they move into their home office, they're still connected to the corporate network, or you want to give them an avenue to be able to install that software, because no longer can your IT team really afford to remotely connect to people's machines and install software or work in that fashion. So Chocolatey GUI is really a window into your applications that you have available in your organization, to allow, as I said, those less technical users who don't want to use the command line to install software and be able to manage their own software. And with all the configuration and the options that we've got with Chocolatey GUI, to be able to let them see, not see the remote sources, not see their PC, let them use the advanced commands, or let them just upgrade and install and uninstall as part of Chocolatey for Business as well, then I think that makes that whole package a lot easier to consume for those users and allows them still to have that, be able to install and work with that software without having so much involvement from IT. So it's a kind of win-win for both sides. And we did do a webinar of that. That's quite some time ago now. The start of the pandemic, round about this, I was involved with that. So if that's something you're interested in, then you can have a look at our YouTube page and you can see that. I will post it in the chat if I can see it before we finish the stream here, or I'll post it in Discord as well for people who want to see that rather than search through our YouTube. Is there anything else you want to bring up, Gary, just before we finish? I know we said we'd be here for another 13 minutes, but you know, it's a Twitch stream, it's flexible. We can go over, we can go under.
There were no changes to it in this release. But the other thing to mention is that in addition to having Chocolatey GUI, there is also a Chocolatey GUI CLI. So you might think that, or anyone out there might be wondering, well, why would I need a CLI for Chocolatey GUI? And it's really more to do with the administrator side of things. So if I run the help command here for Chocolatey GUI CLI to see what I can do, then we'll see that we've got a feature command, I've got a config command, and I've got a purge command. So if I was an administrator and I wanted to perform perhaps during the installation of Chocolatey GUI or some post installation changes to maybe the default parameters or the default features that are enabled within Chocolatey GUI, then if I've got another system like an Ansible or a Puppet, or you're using CCM deployments, and I want to make a change to the configuration settings within Chocolatey GUI, then you can absolutely do that through the Chocolatey GUI CLI. So here I can do, for example, Chocolatey GUI CLI feature and then list, and that will list me out all of the features and their current settings. So if, for example, I wanted to modify this use keyboard binding setting, then I could do Chocolatey GUI CLI feature, and this would be a disable, and then -- name equals, and then that. So what I'm doing here is I'm changing that setting for the currently installed user of the application. So I've just disabled that feature. So if I come, I'll let that load through. I'll need to. I should go back and make this PC source available so it doesn't fetch the package each and every time. But if I go into settings here, then we scroll down to the ones at the bottom, then that's reflected there. That's now disabled for that currently logged in user. And while I am here, then I'm going to go and put this PC source back off again. But the other part of the Chocolatey GUI CLI is that you can specify that with the -- global flag. And the -- global flag disables that feature globally for all the users on that machine. So it's similar in the way to when, if you were to run the Choco feature command, then that feature command is changing features within Chocolatey for all users on that machine. So that's similar here, but the default is to affect the currently logged in user, but the global flag for an administrator allows you to set all those things the way you want them to. So again, we've got lots of features and settings within Chocolatey GUI, or we're starting to have a lot of features and settings within Chocolatey GUI. This then allows system administrators to set up that machine in exactly the way that they want it to during the provisioning of that package. So it's quite a powerful feature. The other one, if I go back to the help command, Then the other command that was there was the purge command. So the purge command is about, so if I do purge and then -h, then the purge command is all about doing the same operations that I can do within Chocolatey GUI itself. So if I want to purge the persisted icons, so if I were to do that one actually, because it's got all the Chocolatey GUI icons, the Chocolatey logos for all the packages, I can purge the icons, or I can purge the outdated packages that Chocolatey GUI keeps a hold of. So again, I can perform those operations at the command line if I need to. So from a system administrator point of view, I've got access to doing all of those things when I need to on machines, rather than having to go into the application, perform the operation within the UI, etc. That didn't purge the icons like I would have expected to. No, sorry, the feature's still enabled. So that's why they're still there. I should have disabled the feature before I purged the icons. That's why they're still showing as the Chocolatey logo. But yeah, so that's a powerful feature that sits alongside Chocolatey GUI once it's installed. There's a Chocolatey GUI CLI as well.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, I think we've come to the end of our Twitch stream today. We are under by 8 minutes. So that's, as I said, that's fine. That's why we do Twitch streams. It's over or under, we're fine. It's flexible in that sense. One thing I wanted to point out to everybody and to bring up that we have a special announcement coming this month. I don't want to talk too much about it. Manfred did mention something about it in our last Twitch stream. So if you really want to know, you can go back and watch that. But I'd like to ask everybody to keep an eye out on Discord, on Twitter, LinkedIn, and all our usual places, Twitch as well, for a special announcement in the next few weeks. We will be running a Twitch stream on the 21st of March. So hopefully you can all join us then. But I would encourage everybody to join Discord before that date, as we may have a special enhancement at that point for our Discord users. That's the plan anyway. That's the plan we have. But with all things being equal, you know, you never know if we're going to be able to do that or not. But that's certainly the plan at the moment. So I want to say thank you, Gary, for taking us through CCM and the components there: Chocolatey GUI license extension, and also Chocolatey GUI CLI. We will be back, as I said, on the 21st of March. That's a special one, but we are here the first Thursday of every month. And as of the month of April, we are looking to do a community Twitch stream as well. And we'll be announcing some dates for that. It will hopefully be 2 weeks after our normal Twitch stream. So it'll be the third Thursday of every month. But we'll be looking to announce that at the time, so you can have more details around about that. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Twitch stream. Thank you.